There are three types of blood vessels: the arteries, capillaries, and veins. And we're now going to have a look at the cross section of these so that you understand their structures. Let's start off with the arteries. The arteries have in the inside here a lumen, and this is where the blood is transported, and they have a relatively thick wall. So let's label this. This one here is the lumen and a thick wall. And this thick wall contains many muscle fibers. So they are in here, there are in a layer. You have in here muscle fibers. And these muscle fibers are able to constrict and relax and therefore change the size of the lumen. And the thick wall over here, it's pretty badly shown here, refers of course to the whole thing over here, the whole wall. On the outside over here, we have a very tough and thick outer coat. And the purpose of this outer coat is to hold the whole blood vessel together, to prevent it from bursting, because the pressure in the arteries is quite high. Veins, in contrast, have a relatively large lumen compared to their wall. Their outer coat is not as thick, and they also have a thinner wall and a relatively large lumen. There are also some muscle fibers in here, but not as many as in an artery. Again, the reason is because the veins do not carry blood of a high blood pressure, and therefore the wall does not have to withstand so much pressure, and there is not as much danger of the wall bursting. Capillaries are very small and are only one cell layer thick. So I'm going to now try to draw the cross section of a capillary. That's supposed to be a capillary cell. That's the nucleus over here. Over here I have another one. I draw the nucleus over here. Let's draw a fourth one. So these are very thin capillary wall, one cell thick wall. It would be probably, it's better if I say a one-celled wall. It would indicate that the wall is only one cell layer thick. You'll have over here, you have pores. And in here, this is the lumen. And I'm going to draw now over here a red blood cell. And you see that the red blood cell in cross-section is relatively large compared to the diameter of the capillary. And that's a red blood cell over here. And that's basically important because the substances like oxygen, nutrients, they have to be able to diffuse. Carbon dioxide has to be able to diffuse in. And if you have a very thin wall, then this diffusion is able to take place much more easily. We move on. And I've got over here now a picture of an artery and a vein. This structure over here, which looks like a number 2, is a vein. And it's the cross section. So what you have over here is this here is the wall of the vein, and it is relatively thin compared to the lumen. It's collapsed, therefore it doesn't look round and looks a little bit like a number 2 over here. But it extends basically out of your screen towards you, and you're looking basically directly into it. The artery over here can be found here, and you can see that the wall is relatively thick. And the lumen, compared to the size of the wall, is also much smaller. This artery here, because there's almost no blood in here, has been squeezed together, therefore is also not round. But if you look at these dots in here, I took this part over here and I enlarged it. All of these dots that you see over here, these are individual red blood cells. And so you can imagine now the size of a capillary, because a capillary is only a little bit bigger than an individual red blood cell. So the size difference is quite remarkable here. So again, a vein over here, artery over here, red blood cells still in here, and the capillaries about the size of one of these red blood cells. Let's compare these blood vessels right now. How are arteries, veins, and veins defined? Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Blood away from heart. Now, please understand that this is a very short way of writing it. That's not a full definition. You have blood away from heart, artery. This doesn't make sense. You have to say arteries carry blood away from the heart and veins carry, let's write it properly, blood to the heart. What about capillaries? Well, neither. At the capillaries, because they are found between arteries and veins, well, at the beginning, you cannot really say whether they carry the blood away or towards the heart. So this is actually not applicable, really. What about the blood pressure? The blood pressure in arteries is high. The blood pressure in veins is low. And at the capillaries, the blood pressure falls from high to low. This is the reason actually why in a vein we have a low blood pressure, because of so many thin capillaries the blood pressure drops. The wall thickness compared to the lumen in arteries, it's thick. In veins it's thin, and in capillaries it's really thin. It's only one cell layer thick, very thin. And this is important to allow for diffusion to take place. The speed of the blood flow, as our last part over here, in arteries the speed of the blood flow is fast, it's high. In veins it is slow. And how can you guess it? The arteries, it goes from fast at the beginning to slow. So the speed drops here. The blood inside, once it reaches the arteries, the blood actually flows already slow. So that is basically the difference and similarities. These are the differences and similarities between arteries, veins, and capillaries.